Don't you wish all jobs came with a training manual? And isn't that the case, especially being a parent? I have three kids, soon to be four kids, and probably same thing rings true for you. Don't you wish that you had, a guide, a roadmap, something to clearly map out exactly when things should develop and exactly how they should develop and at what point things should develop as well. So that's what in today's video we're going to talk about and bring some ease and some clarity to this conversation for you that are potentially in your gut thinking that something may be off with my child. And we're going to go through those stages and the sequences of development and what is normal, what is not normal, what is common versus uncommon. And we'll look and we'll help bring some clarity to this conversation and bring some ease as to how your child is progressing through those first few stages of life. So, as a parent, one of the biggest drivers as to how I care for my children is listening to my gut. And that was very much the same case and story for little Miss Harper. We see a lot of kids come into the office, and she being one of them that struggled with a developmental milestone. When she got to us, she was having issues walking, but mom knew intuitively that something was off even beforehand. And going through her story, she had a tougher birth. She was born with a lot of tension through her head, through her upper neck. She struggled breastfeeding, looking left to right to effectively feed on both sides, to open and close her mouth. And she struggled throughout her first year of life with digestive issues to the point where she would constantly cry and couldn't self-soothe. So that's what this conversation is all about today, is to look at these phases of development. And when it comes to kids, are they highly complex? Absolutely. But the way I like to break it down is very simplistically in the form of really two phases of development. So I want to share my screen and go through this with you, because when we look at a baby's development, there really are two phases to it. Phase one being that eat, sleep, poop, and move phase. And that then sets up shop for phase two. So it's not necessarily looking at exactly when your child is moving through development, but more importantly, it's looking at the sequence, the order. Are we achieving development with ease, because that's what sets up for this next stage, higher executive function. These multi-complex systems, they stack or they build upon the previous milestone. So going through that very first 3 to 4 months when babies are designed to eat, sleep, and poop, if we are having issues with one or all three of those systems, that's a possible red flag that development down the line may be affected. And most often parents, they'll get to phase two, and that's when they see the challenge, the struggle show up with speech, with language, with communication. But most often, there was a challenge that first started through that first year of life, in the shape, in the form of an eating challenge, a breastfeeding challenge, or a digestion challenge, a child that couldn't soothe properly, couldn't sleep, couldn't poop, or couldn't move, couldn't turn their head and look left to right, couldn't roll over, couldn't get up on their hands and knees, couldn't sit up properly, or they might have skipped a step entirely, right? That sequence is the most important piece to the puzzle looking at your child's development. So, how does the system become disconnected? How does development become disrupted? Well, most often, what we see in our office is through this right here, birth. Birth being the biggest physical stress that we all have to endure, especially at that very, very early phase of development. And whether it was, a birth where there was a lot of intervention, whether it was even just some in utero constraint or tightness within the pregnancy periods of baby, whatever that looks like, what that has a tendency to do is to affect the head, the upper neck, and because of its location, to very delicate circuitry or wires or functions within the system. So, specifically the upper neck, when we have irritation, or what we call it chiropractically, we call it a subluxation. So, when the system is irritated or inflamed or subluxated, specifically through the head, the upper neck, a baby's brain is going to know that, and it's going to go into this muscle tightness or tension. So that's what was happening with little Harper when she first came to the office. We went through her story, we went through her history, and she had a challenge looking and feeding on both sides equally and effectively because there was more tone and tension on one side, which was causing her head to turn or tilt in the form of what's called torticollis. So now when we have this increased tone and tension here, the brain is trying to protect this delicate wiring. It's going to affect how we eat. It's also going to affect and influence what's called the vagus nerve. So the neurology that leaves the head and the brain and exits and passes in front of the top two neurovertebrae in the neck, and it goes into our internal organs to relax the system, to put it in a state where it can accept food in, keep it in, and move it out through the bottom. So if the system is irritated, the entire system now, system wide, becomes tightened up. So if we do get food in, it's going to shoot back up. Or if we do get food in, it's going to stay in there and it's going to get stuck and stagnant, and it's going to start to create a lot of gassiness or discomfort rather than having the system efficiently move it through in a nice, calm manner. That's that first phase. That first phase of eat, sleep, poop, hold our head up, look left to right, roll over, start to push up, start to sit up, start to crawl, then start to walk. That sets up for this second phase of development, which is speech, sensory, social play, and then learning, right? So the upper neck not only is going to influence that digestion portion, but it's also going to influence that motor portion. So walking and leads to talking. Now, if we do not walk properly, or if we do not go through the proper developmental milestones, like we talked about, from a motor standpoint, which is holding our head up, looking left to right, which is rolling over, which is pushing up, crawling, sitting up, walking. That leads to the second phase. So the upper neck not only controls how we turn our head left to right, but it also controls coordination, balance. It controls it is going to influence what's called the cerebellum, or the base of the brain. That is the motor movement of the entire nervous system as a whole. So if that area becomes affected, it not just affects one thing, it can affect multiple things. So as that second phase of development comes online, it's based upon the previous milestones or how efficient we were at that point. Okay, so if you are someone that has been struggling with a child that just hasn't been moving through the phases of development, you know in your mom gut that something is off, please do not hesitate to reach out. We're going to walk you through what is normal, what is not normal. We're going to go through your child's case history to bring some clarity as to potentially where this first disconnect or disruption first started within, whether or not they had an issue with the breastfeeding journey or a bottle feeding journey, whether they had an issue with sleeping, with pooping, digestion, colicky. Those are all signs that as we get to phase two, age 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, where now we're having a bigger developmental challenge, we have to go back to gain some clarity to see exactly how the nervous system was growing and developing. And if there is something there in their story, in their history, finding a neurologically pediatric based focused chiropractor is going to be the best bet to get things reconnected, to get things restored so that normal developmental progression can take place, just like it did with Harper. Within a few short months of care, she was back. She had met all of her milestones, from not being able to walk at 18 months to walking, and then shortly after that talking. So the nervous system, it can pick up, it can learn so incredibly fast when we have a calm, connected system. But the nervous system, it cannot be in growth and survival mode at the same time. It cannot be in fight or flight and protection versus in growth and development. That's not how the nervous system works. The nervous system gets stuck in this protection state when we have a lot of stress on the system, and the most notable one being that birth process. The birth process is so physically stressful on your baby's head and their upper neck. And you know intuitively when you first held your baby, what's that one area that you made sure to protect, that you made sure to stabilize, that was because you knew intuitively that that area is the most unstable and that area is the most important to their development. But often through labor and delivery, that area can become irritated and inflamed and show up on the outside as a child that has issues eating, sleeping, pooping, soothing, or moving through those normal stages of development. So if you got value out of this conversation today, please share this with your friends. Please like it, comment. Please reach out to us as well and let us help you work through those developmental challenges. I look forward to talking with you all in our next video. God bless.